Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second breakout session of the Young SDG Innovator Summit. I am Oliviana. I will be moderating this discussion today. I am the Women in AI Ambassador for the Netherlands, where we support women in the field of artificial intelligence to be represented better by this tech. Today's session is about innovation through the gender lens, and with me is Inka, who will also be talking about her experience as a woman in a male-dominated industry, engineering, and her work on gender in innovation. So I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Hello, Oliviana. Hello, all. Thank you very much. I'm Ekin Dalak. As Oliviana introduced me, I am working in a household company where male-dominated technology is developed. I am working as a R&D engineer. My background is chemical engineering, and currently I am studying my PhD thesis over environmental engineering. And I was in this program, SDG, Young SDG Innovators in 2019, and I left with great experiences, the program. Thanks very much for inviting me.
Great, thanks so much. Maybe to kick off this discussion, one of the key questions I think that really is kind of sparks this innovation through the gender lens is how the creation and use of AI in many industries, like your own, may be detrimental to women's lives, and how can we solve these issues?
First of all, we must bear in mind that AI has been created by humans as the society we live in today. So it's very natural that at least for a while, AI-driven world will face the same problems, same obstacles that we are dealing for the moment in the real world. So if we don't pay attention, it can be very detrimental to women's lives, in daily lives or in professional lives. So we know that there are some bias against women in many different industries. For example, if I can give an example from my industry, my sector, I may say that for the decades, women are has been regarded as only as end users. I am working in a household company, so only the women are the end users of our products. So whole marketing strategies are built over that perspective, over that idea. But it's really nice to see now the world is changing, maybe slowly, but it is changing. Now, not just the women, all genders, all types of human beings are regarded as end users. And we might say that that is because women are finding their places when it comes to developing those products. So they give ideas, they work as technicians, engineers, and they started to be in the decision-making process as well. This is much more slower, but within the AI, with the AI, we might come there. So we should use AI for solving those questions, especially the momentum problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. So you're working in an industry where the product is being developed by mostly men, but it's being targeted to mostly women usually. You kind of have an interesting perspective on the innovation sector, because the male-dominated product people might not be thinking about consequences to women. Like maybe the chemicals that they're making for household items will interact with certain skin types that women are more likely to have, or like say most women wear lotion or something on their hands, and maybe there's a chemical within the lotion that could interact. Maybe that's not something they would think of.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa, the marketing AI is being used right now for marketing. And predatory marketing is really becoming a big challenge within the tech scene because of AI being able to such hyper target, vulnerable people, recognizing their purchasing patterns. So I think that you're in a really interesting industry. So tell me, how do you see AI being able to both hinder the lives of women, but also how could we be working to solve that?
Well, yeah, for example, again, once we look at the marketing, white goods, let's take a look at that. Dishwashers or washing machines are designed for mostly female users. It can be true. I mean, most of the users can be females, but the world is changing for the moment. And once we take this as it is, then it will be women that will use those products all the time. I mean, if we keep feeding in that direction, then it will keep going in that direction. So that is where AI can come to the point as a solution, because AI is learning, and it is learning faster than us, faster than human brain. So it can be a part of the solution where we try to deal with for the centuries within AI. With the help of AI, maybe we can figure it out in years, not the centuries, let me say. So I think it is a chance. AI is a chance that we should not miss as a fresh start. We can build the society that we want to live in, new society dynamics together with the AI, and use it as a fresh start. We should keep in mind when designing those AI algorithms that there is bias against women, and we should apply some maybe positive discrimination, I don't know, and we should feed the AI with the correct data, or let me say, once we feed the AI, we should really use that gender goggles, gender lenses.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. I think most AI is actually being trained on historical data, which can be seen as biased, obviously, being in different roles over history. And lack of representation within the tech industry can certainly prevent us from actually training the models to be without bias. I think there's actually a really interesting example of an untrained AI, which, through a gender lens is an important part of training. So they trained an AI bot to come up with as a chatbot, and it was supposed to respond back to customers and just kind of self-learn. But then a bunch of hackers came in, and actually it was creating a lot of profanity, and the bot learned all of this interaction that was actually quite negative, really sexist. And so they had to essentially kill the whole bot and restart it all over, because its historical training then was completely corrupted. So I think it's really important that AI is still isn't really fully isn't at its a full adult stage, it's still like a toddler. If you start swearing around it, it will learn that, and it will say, swear words when you don't want it to.
We cannot, it's like we cannot expect AI to be a gender blind. We cannot expect gender blindness from AI if we don't have it yet. Yeah. So that's where maybe some interferences are necessary. Once we are closer to the ideal world, then maybe gender blindness can be interrogated. Yeah.
I think that there will always be some kind of bias because as we try to mitigate the bias, it will train to overcorrect, and then as society might progress where it doesn't need that overcorrection, it might still exist. So I think no technology is without fault, and that's because it's built by humans who are without fault as well.
Right.
So I think that's quite interesting. Maybe to move on to another question. So how can artificial intelligence help companies reach gender parity? I think we were chatting about this earlier, especially in the recruitment field. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the key to not all, but most of the answers around this topic is the representation, as you mentioned before. So representation is extremely important in every step of the way. I mean, from scratch till the end. Recruitment processes should be revisited, definitely. We should overcome the stereotypes. I mean, there's no man job, there's no woman job. I mean, women can be technicians, engineer, CFOs, CEOs, chief technology officers, and etc., as well as men. I mean, this is like a freedom for both women and men. I mean, people should be able to do whatever they want to do, or if they are qualified, of course, but this should be beyond their gender. So representation is very important. After the representation, then we might start to think that for example, senior positions, not just as a workforce, or not just as motives, some nice motives in the brain teams and in the background teams. There should be senior positions for women as well. So they should be able to be a part of the decision-making processes. I think those points are very critical. First, companies should revisit their recruitment processes from that perspective. And AI can be assistant once they are doing that recruitment job. I mean, the AI can even say, for the moment, can say how sexist you are looking at your data. I mean, so this can be used as a tool as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of interesting ways we can use AI from a recruitment perspective. But I think it also starts like even before adding an innovation to it, as you mentioned, to put women in kind of the position of that hiring process in more senior in the decision-making roles.
Because gender inequality is kind of hidden. Okay, maybe in the last 5 years, we are gaining awareness. There's a worldwide awareness, but before that, it was really hidden. I mean, if you ask a question to a CEO of a company or the head of the human resources, the answer will be, no, we are not such a company. So equality is so important for us, they will say. But then the data speaks. Actually, if we can talk today about that topic, AI might something to do with it too. I mean, because now we can generate data, we can generate evidence more easily thanks to those data science and AI and machine learning tools. So it's already helping, I guess, I might say.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely working on a lot of gender parity. I think I've seen some quite interesting tools that have popped up for that from the recruitment process, where they kind of do kind of like they block out certain key information that might be seen with a gender bias to it. Like obviously like name, gender, age, where it's just checking that that you are a person without having the actual end user see who the gender is and who that person is. So I think that can be quite interesting. Obviously, we can reflect also maybe on other elements of AI and gender across the other SDGs. So you're also currently studying environmental engineering at the moment for your PhD. So can you kind of give some insights about how gender and climate change are interacting?
Well, for sure, we know that climate change will affect mostly to women and children, especially due to migration, worldwide migration due to climate change is affecting more women than men, we might say. There are many data already generated from that point of view. So yeah, climate change will definitely affect the women in a very, very, very negative way. For example, they are already in a delicate situation professionally. So once they have to move, once they want to start a new life in another place, they have to build their professional lives from scratch. We know that. And it's much more difficult for women to be able to do that. And there are many cultural differences. I mean, the Western society and the Eastern society, but most of the Eastern society people are trying to move to the West because we know that for the moment there's a very poverty due to high temperature levels because of the climate change. And they started to leave their field, but they are field workers. So once they move to the Western society country in a big city, what will they do? They will start to clean houses or cook for other people, but they won't be able to do what they are trained for or what they are accustomed for. So yeah, there are many problems that women will tackle in the next decades, we might say.
Due to climate change, yes. And do you think that there's technologies that are coming out that could actually help women? I know from my experience, I used to work at an accelerator that dealt with legal justice tech. So from a migration perspective, one of the startups we found was using blockchain for cryptocurrency, so that obviously when you migrate, there's obviously an issue with banking. So to be able to have banking that's decentralized, because once you get into a new country, it'll take weeks, maybe even months before you can actually have like the proper documentations to get a bank account. Never mind if your country you're leaving will allow your banking information to leave at that point.
Yeah.
And they also help with the blockchain in terms of saving your identity. But have you seen any interesting technologies out there?
From the climate change perspective.
Climate change, like obviously climate change is from a perspective of like gender. So obviously we mentioned migration affecting women and obviously being able to verify their professional lives. So it'd be quite interesting if you've seen other technologies that have popped up that could help with the challenge.
Yeah, for example, I don't know if it's I don't know if it's very much related with AI, but it's the internet-based technologies are very important, so they can build a network Once I was living abroad as well. When I was leaving, there was no such progress to be a part of a network. But internet technologies and app technologies are very helpful for them to be able to each other for the moment. And as I said before, I think the most use of it is related with being visible. Those things were hidden, and then we did not know about it. But now I know that the immigrants that are coming to my country, or the immigrants that are going out of my country, what they are facing with. And in a minute, in a second, I can be aware of that, and I can be a help even from the distance. So not a certain technology I can point out, but in general, I might say that today's modern world, the internet and the app technologies are really useful for them, especially once when you don't know the language of the country that you move. But you can, I don't know, call a cab, call Uber, or you can move things around. You can buy stuff easily from those apps and etc. I might say.
Yeah. And I think we've talked a lot about like representation, obviously in the physical sense, like being able to be seen and everything. But I think one thing that we kind of have missed is health innovations. I think this is kind of an undercurrent that you kind of see in both representation within obviously the industry itself, and being a tech person, being a healthcare person, historical data, climate change. I think health tech really kind of underlies all of these aspects. So one of the, maybe an example I could give, obviously Zika was is still a massive problem, but it mostly affects women. And I've seen actually some quite interesting technologies using the satellite data to be able to track where the concentration of mosquitoes in certain areas and recognize hotspots for Zika using AI and satellite data. So those are some interesting like environmental technologies coming out. But also, when you look back at historical data, when they're doing drug development, most medical data is actually white male. So it's not even just maybe I'm getting a little bit too far into the diversity pool, but it's not just a gender issue. It's a ethnicity issue that we're seeing. The data in itself, because it's lacking, is biased. So what are your thoughts on that?
I was really shocked when I learned that most of the drugs or medical treatments were developed, and their R&D studies were done with, as you said, white male, middle-aged white male people. I was really shocked, and this was not centuries ago. I mean, it was up until recently. So, well, yeah, this is a huge problem, and I was not aware of it. I mean, I was really shocked.
It's
For
crazy.
example, yeah, it's creepy. For example, there was a doctor speaking the other day. I forgot his name. I'm so sorry. He was saying that even the questionnaires that were prepared for the sick people, for mostly white, male, middle-aged people, for example, do you have any pink rushes? This is not applied for a Black person. I mean, this is not applied for another ethnicity. I know that. I mean, these type of little stuff that we should pay attention for the moment, definitely. Yeah. But I am thinking, like, when it comes to health, it is much more essential. I mean, human life is so important. Now with the pandemic, we know the value of that much more than before, I assume. So yeah, when it comes to medical technologies or healthcare system, there should be paid attention. I mean, definitely, for sure, no questions attached. Yeah.
I think actually out of any industry that needs to really put a gender lens on, I think healthcare needs to be under a tighter scope these days. I think they
Because
were
we know that, I'm sorry, because we know that most of the healthcare workers that are attracted, well, affected by COVID are female as well. Because much more women are working closer with the other COVID patients than male without protection. So yeah, even that sets an example.
Yeah, well, and another good example is like the symptoms for a heart attack. Obviously, we as a society have been kind of like programmed, like, oh, it's if you have like tingling or numbness in your right arm, but that's actually really mostly a symptom for male heart attacks. Women show completely different symptoms, and it's often really it's missed by doctors. And I think actually this is where AI could be a huge help in solving problems that bias and gender often crop up.
Yeah, of course. I mean, well, today we are talking about feminist technologies, not just feminist people, but feminist technologies. I mean, even the many birth control methods are targeted for women. I mean, there is no equality in that either. So yeah,
Oh,
once. Yeah.
that one got me upset. The birth control, when they came out with the male birth control and then recalled it because it had the same symptoms as women birth control, like bloating, mood swings, risk of a heart attack. I was like, those are all symptoms what you're facing. What do you mean you're calling this drug?
Yeah, responsibilities should be shared. You're right.
I think that's where our anchor should really be focused on is how can a medication that are given to women left, right, and center is being pushed when the male counterpart wasn't even approved for that.
You are absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah. So maybe so I think we're coming to the end of this discussion. I think we only have a few more minutes left. So maybe we can both impart our thoughts about innovation through the gender lens. So your advice for future technologists that want to try to solve these problems, what should maybe they keep in mind?
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, this is a chance for a fresh start. So we should not miss that chance because we might not get another one. And we should trust AI technologies, AI-based tools for a faster and more powerful development for the society dynamics. And I am very hopeful and I trust Gen Z, I might say. And my advice would be keep up working. That's all.
Great. Yeah. And then I guess for my advice to build on yours is to question historical data, build new data that's better representative. So is making sure that women and other ethnicities are included in the gender medical data. That your team that's built of data scientists are diverse so that they can recognize gender disparity within your trainings and data. And finally, to make sure that who's building your product is whoever is building the product is there's somebody in that team that the end user is, so that I think that's the key in almost any innovation is
Pay attention to what you buy. Pay attention to what you buy and make sure that they are developed by both men and women.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the startup saying is know your customer, and you know your customer if you're representing your customer as well. So
yeah, perfect.
okay, well, thank you so much for this chat. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about from other innovators at the Young SDG Summit. So join the next breakout sessions or panel or whatever it is next.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.